Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Thank you so much for joining us here on Health Professional Radio. Our guest in studio today is Mr. John Malanca, founder of United Patients Group, and he's here to talk about why he started UPG and their mission to be a trusted resource for health professionals, patients, and organizations in the industry of medical cannabis information and accredited education. Welcome to the program, Mr. Malanca.
Thank you for having me, Neal. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today. United Patients Group, you're the founder of this group. Talk about why you started UPG and exactly what role does UPG play in the, getting the word out about the benefits and maybe some of the misconceptions about medical cannabis.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. Why I started this, actually with my wife back in 2011, my father-in-law, Stan Rutner, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, metastasized to his brain. He went from a healthy 77-year-old man to literally looking like a prisoner of war, and he was literally wasting in front of our eyes. And he went to the point of living with oxygen. His oncologist said he would not live off of oxygen, nor would he be able to walk. So I said, I'd like to go to your next oncologist appointment if I could. So we, as a family, I literally picked him up, put him in a wheelchair, and wheeled him in with oxygen tanks. And we went to his oncologist out here in California. And we asked, how much time do we have? Actually, my father-in-law asked, how much time do we have? And she looked at us and looked at him, and he said, this is my family. And she said, 2 weeks. And you can imagine how the air in that room. And I had just recently lost my father, so I was a wreck. And I said, there has to be something. And his oncologist said, we can give you morphine. And my father-in-law, Stan, said, I'm not in any pain. And I looked at my wife and everybody. I said, I don't mean to offend anybody here, but what about medical cannabis and cancer? We're seeing some information in the news right now. And this is back in 2011, so the information that was then compared to now is archaic. Yeah. And his oncologist said, good luck, you have 2 weeks, go for it. If they would have said 18 hours of life left, we would have thought that would have been more realistic because he was gone. And we came across a study that showed 40% of cancer patients die of malnutrition before cancer itself.
Oh, wait, now, if I can pause you just one moment. You say 40% die of malnutrition. The cancer isn't what killed them. They could have maybe survived or survived longer had they been eating?
Well, when a lot of cancer patients, when they're fighting cancer, they just go in the wasting stages. And even in a healthy body, and I know I've had it numerous times, low blood sugar and your energy level just goes down. Imagine incorporating disease such as cancer in there. And so that was a study that we found that 40% of cancer patients die of malnutrition due to the fact of not eating, and their body is literally shutting down, which we have seen a lot with patients taking morphine. And it's happened with my own family members as with my wife's family members. Her grandfather recently passed, and that was he was on morphine, and it slowly just shuts the body down, pain-free. But that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to make his last few days and weeks as comfortable as we possibly could, truly not knowing the medical benefits of cannabis at that point. All we knew, yes, there have been studies of cancer, THC killing cancer cells, but also we wanted him to eat. We knew that cannabis does induce the munchies, an appetite. Yeah. And so we went into true panic education for him. And we came across a coconut oil infused capsule with raw and heated cannabis, so not cannabis oil, but raw and heated cannabis. And the reason we went with something like that, and I'm telling you, we had a guardian angel, and I believe it was my father. Yeah. But the reason we went that way is because it was the only product back then that allowed us to. The dosing instructions back then in 2011, I guess, weren't there. And the reason we went with this coconut oil capsule because it was the only product that we saw that we were able to freeze and cut. And so just to see where his body and, what ratios worked with my father-in-law, we froze this capsule. We gave him about a quarter of a capsule, which is about 5 to 6 milligrams of cannabinoids, not a lot. And within 24 hours, he was eating. And he was eating like a teenage kid. And within 8 days, he was shuffling around the house. And on that 8th day, he put away his oxygen tank. Wow. And I remember going to his house and just looking at him. And I said, don't get too, I use the word cocky, but I don't get too cocky on us. And he laughed, thinking, okay, let's see how this goes. Well, 2 weeks passed, 6 months passed, and at the 6-month mark, he was already walking and driving and everything else like that. And hospice, which was called in back on day one, finally said, hey, we have to fire you as a patient. Wow. You're doing extremely well. And so you can imagine how we felt. And by that point, we had already started this company, United Patients Group. And the reason why we started this is because when we were in panic education mode, all the information out there had to do with the recreational market. Nothing wrong with it, but we were trying to save my father-in-law's life. And so the information was not there. And we said, gosh, we know there has to be a million other families like us, not only here in the States, but globally, that cannabis was not our lifestyle. And so we put it all in one location, and that's what United Patients Group is about. But at the 6-month mark, we incorporated the fecal oil, which is the full extract cannabis oil. And again, he used minute amounts. So I know there's a lot of information out there that say take 1 gram to 2 grams a day. And for us, that was not the case. I think the max we did was about 15 to 20 milligrams of cannabinoids a day. It's not a one-size-fits-all ratio. And I'll get into that later on in this talk. But he would take literally the size of a sesame seed of this fecal oil, the full extract cannabis oil, at night under his tongue. So he was able to sleep through any psychoactive effect. But in the daytime, he did take the coconut oil capsule, which still allowed him to function in the daytime. And at the 9-month mark, he was never going to get scanned. At the 9-month mark, he and my mother-in-law went behind our backs just to see what was going on, because they were already living life. He was riding a bike, swinging a golf club, and going on vacation. And he said, maybe we should just see what's going on. And I remember we got a phone call, and every time the phone would ring early or late, morning or night, my wife and I would look at each other like, it's just a call that we've been expecting.
You say you went to his next oncology appointment as a family. Is UPG a family endeavor as well? Is your wife be involved, or?
Yeah, she's co-founder. So she and I started this company for that, and her name is Malanca.
Good afternoon, Corinne. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
With all the talk in the media about legalizing marijuana, different oils and extracts, different states having different laws, that having to do with the recreational side a lot more than the medical side. But I'm understanding that your involvement in the medical side is quite significant, especially when it comes to dispelling some of the misconceptions about medical cannabis. Could you talk a bit about your take on it?
Correct. Yeah, we're squarely focused on the medical side of the industry, and that's not to place a negative on the recreational. It's just not our focus. So our focus is to make sure that the public and patients and people in need, including local or state governments and foreign governments, we want to make sure that they understand the science behind this modality and what has been founded. And there's a lot of research out there. Of course, the U.S. is not leading in the research, but there is research out there about the medical benefits of medical cannabis, whether it's autoimmune cancers, schizophrenia. There's quite a few directions that this takes us, and we are very passionate about the presenting medical education so that all the myths can be dispelled.
Let's talk a little bit about your website, UnitedPatientsGroup.com.
We are pretty high ranking. I mean, people find us from all over the world, and we do have medical staff that does offer consultations for patients, not only here in the U.S., but globally. We don't sell products, but people do find us quite helpful, and so, we reach I can't tell you how many Australians we work with on a weekly basis, as well as Europeans, New Zealand, Asia, South America, and here in the U.S. as well. So, but yeah, no, we have a large reach. I think a lot of times people appreciate what we do because we do get a lot of doctors that recommend their patients, even that live in an illegal state or legal country, but when their patients do ask about medical cannabis, they do feel comfortable that they can direct them to our website because we don't have an ulterior motive to sell a product.
Absolutely.
We're strictly information and education, and we pride ourselves on that.
Right. That's UnitedPatientsGroup.com, where you can find informational blogs and news about United Patients Group as well. You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard, and we've been talking in studio today with Mr. John and Corinne Malanca, founder of United Patients Group. We've been in studio talking about the mission of United Patients Group to become and maintain themselves as a leading resource in medical cannabis information and not only education, but accredited education to health professionals, patients, and organizations as well. It's been a pleasure talking with both of you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at hpr.fm and also at healthprofessionalradio.com.au, and you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes.